My name is Naomi Blake, and I was 31, working as an intake coordinator at a pediatric clinic in Minneapolis. Life was pretty standard, pretty quiet. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, everything changed. I was busy, finalizing patient records, half listening to my coworker tell some hilarious story about her toddler's latest meltdown, when my cell phone vibrated with a number I didn't recognize. Usually, I'd let those go straight to voicemail, but something about this one, it just didn't feel like spam. I stepped into the quiet hallway, took a deep breath, and answered. Miss Blake, this is Nathan from North Lakes Credit Union. I'm calling regarding your past due mortgage on the Highland property. You're 3 months delinquent. My mind went blank. I'm sorry, I stammered, blinking hard, trying to process his words. What mortgage? He repeated the amount. $623,000. For a second, I honestly couldn't breathe. Me? A $600,000 house? I lived in a rented one-bedroom apartment near Hennepin Avenue. I had no savings for a down payment, no cosigner, no grand delusions about home ownership in this economy. This had to be a scam. It just had to be. But then he read the address. Highland Avenue. The name didn't click immediately, but when it did, a horrifying chill snaked its way down my spine. My sister, Alyssa, and her husband, Gavin, had just moved into a gorgeous craftsman home on Highland a few months prior. I'd even visited them once. We'd sat on their patio, eating mousse cake. And now, suddenly, my entire body went cold. I ended the call as politely as I could, my voice barely a whisper, and then I practically fled. I locked myself in the staff restroom, my hands trembling as I pulled up my credit report on my phone. There it was, right there. The account, my name, my social security number, and an address updated to their house. In that moment, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even think to call Alyssa. I just stared at my reflection in the mirror, watching my own face shift, slowly, agonizingly, from utter confusion to a sickening, gut-wrenching realization. This wasn't some clerical error. This wasn't a joke. Someone had stolen my entire identity to buy a $600,000 home, and deep down, I already knew exactly who. And what terrified me most wasn't the betrayal itself, but the chilling certainty that the people who raised us would probably beg me not to do a damn thing about it. After that call, everything around me blurred. The clinic's cheerfully painted walls, the happy sound of children's laughter echoing from the waiting area, even the gentle hum of the printers and the nurses chatting, it all just faded into this indistinct, muffled background that I could no longer inhabit. I finished the day on autopilot, forcing smiles when necessary, nodding vaguely when prompted. But inside, something fundamental had cracked. That evening, back in my own apartment, I sank onto my worn green couch and just stared at the ivy spilling over my windowsill. I'd raised those plants from tiny clippings, painstakingly revived them through harsh Minnesota winters, even talked to them on long, lonely nights after particularly hard days. My little home wasn't glamorous, no, but it was mine. It was uncomplicated. It was honest. Just like the way I'd always tried to live my life. I'd never had much interest in keeping up with anyone, not even Alyssa. She was 3 years older than me, and from the time we were kids, she was always the one in the spotlight. Homecoming queen. A real estate license by 22. A husband with a finance degree. A luxury SUV. A meticulously curated Instagram feed that screamed, perfect life. And me? I processed new patient intakes and scheduled surgeries. I owned one pair of heels, and I used my PTO for dentist appointments. I didn't think of myself as boring. I thought of myself as peaceful. But peace doesn't exactly make headlines at family dinners. Every other Sunday, we'd all gather at my parents' home in St. Paul. Dad would uncork a bottle of Cabernet, declare it too young with a wink, while Mom laid out her famous lasagna, always insisting we take seconds before we'd even touched our first bites. Alyssa always arrived late, of course, making an entrance. Big laugh, big stories, big earrings. She'd compliment my shoes then, almost as an afterthought, ask if I'd ever thought about moving somewhere more grown up than a rental. I'd just laugh it off. I always did. It was easier than trying to explain that I'd chosen stability over show. They didn't ask much about my life. No one ever said it out loud, but I knew I didn't quite fit their idea of success. I had no ring, no shiny promotion stories, no glamorous beachfront vacation photos to share. I just had bills that I paid on time and a life I wasn't ashamed of. And now, that entire life was hanging by a thread. By the way, if you're finding this story as unbelievable as I did living it, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, there are more shocking twists coming, and I don't want you to miss out. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, replaying every interaction, wondering how long Alyssa had been planning this. Had she casually flipped through my mail when I was in the shower? Did she snap pictures of my ID while I was setting the table for Christmas dinner? And Gavin? Had he known? Of course he had. He was the one who always bragged about knowing how to make paperwork disappear. The sheer audacity of it now made my jaw clench so hard it ached. They were living in a house that had my name on the deed, and I hadn't even been allowed to pick the wallpaper. I showed up at North Lakes Credit Union the next day, ID in hand, social security card clutched so tight my knuckles were white, and a pit in my stomach so dense it made every breath feel like a chore. The branch manager, a man named Evan Carlson, met me in a conference room with sterile gray walls and a potted plant that looked far too perfect to be real. He slid a folder across the table with a professionalism I both appreciated and, at the same time, deeply resented. Inside were loan documents, closing disclosures, income statements, all with my name, my address, and a signature that almost looked like mine. But not quite. This was all processed online, Miss Blake, Evan explained, his voice low. Uploaded documents, digital signatures, income verification. He paused. The income stated here is generous. I leaned forward. How much? $198,000 a year. A breathless, bitter laugh escaped me. I make 42. His tone shifted, becoming grave. Miss Blake, if you're saying you didn't apply for this loan, this appears to be fraud. Identity theft. You'll need to contact the police and start the dispute process immediately. I want copies of everything, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. As I left the bank, I clutched that folder like it was a detonator. I didn't go home. I drove to a strip mall coffee shop, ordered a black coffee I didn't touch, and began reading each page, desperate for an answer, a clue, anything that would tell me how my sister had become a stranger. The next few days blurred into a haze of phone calls and quiet, simmering rage. I filed a fraud alert with the credit bureaus. My credit score, once a respectable, spotless 726, had cratered to 542. It wasn't just the mortgage delinquencies. There was a home equity line, 3 maxed-out credit cards, a personal loan, all under my name, all linked to an email address that was off by a single digit, instead of Naomi. Easy to miss, easy to explain away, unless you knew exactly what you were doing. I started searching for proof. The kind of proof that couldn't be laughed off over a glass of wine at dinner. A coworker's husband, who happened to work in digital forensics, pointed me to a handwriting analyst. The analyst compared the mortgage signatures to copies of my real signature from my nursing license and my apartment lease. These are forged, he said, without hesitation. Clever, but absolutely forged. Someone was being careful. Too careful. Could you testify to that? I asked. I could. Then came the part one wasn't proud of. I started snooping. I wasn't technically entitled to look into Alyssa's financial history, but I knew where to look for the cracks. Her Instagram might have shown champagne flutes and summer hats, but it also showed far too many extravagant vacations for a couple who had supposedly just downgraded careers. A friend of mine from college, who worked at a luxury dealership downtown, remembered Alyssa coming in to lease a new Mercedes. She looked amazing, Naomi, my friend whispered over the phone, but when they ran her credit, it just tanked the application. Gavin had to pay in cash. She leaned in conspiratorially. He didn't look thrilled about it. Their marriage, once a glossy feature spread in our family's social scrapbook, was fraying at the seams. But what stunned me most wasn't the money. It was the chilling intent. They weren't just borrowing against my name. They were actively setting me up for a catastrophic collapse. The police would later confirm that searches from Gavin's old laptop included terms like declare bankruptcy in someone else's name and can you abandon a stolen identity legally? That wasn't desperation. That was calculated strategy. By the end of the week, I'd gathered enough to make a case. Not just to the authorities, but to the people who'd taught me that family comes first, no matter what. And still, I hesitated. Not because I didn't believe they deserved consequences, but because I knew, with absolute certainty, the moment I uttered the word police, the people who loved us both would ask me to stay quiet. Sunday dinner. Lasagna, as always. My mother had texted the night before, asking if I wanted her to pick up that mousse cake I liked from Sage and Willow. I'd told her not to bother. Alyssa, I'd said, already had dessert covered. Of course, she did. I spent nearly an hour getting dressed, not because I cared how I looked, but because I needed to feel fortified. I settled on a navy blouse and dark slacks. Professional. Unshakable. Not the little sister in borrowed shoes anymore. Not tonight. The manila folder in my bag felt heavier with each step toward the door. When I arrived, everything looked exactly the same. My dad in his recliner with a glass of Pinot. My mom in an apron, flitting from kitchen to table. Gavin was helping plate the garlic bread, and Alyssa, of course, made her entrance 5 minutes late. Hair perfectly curled. Cream silk blouse untucked just enough to look effortlessly chic. She greeted me like nothing was wrong. Naomi, finally, you look so put together. Promotion I haven't heard about. I smiled. No promotion, just dressing for the occasion. Dinner began like 1,000 others before it. My brother, Sam, and his wife were there, chatting about their home renovation. Alyssa bragged about the sunroom in her new house, how it caught the golden hour just right. My mother laughed. My father poured more wine. The mousse cake sat chilling in the fridge, its presence hanging over me like a dare. As the plates cleared, I reached into my bag and wrapped my hand around the folder. My chest felt tight, but not from fear. There was only absolute clarity now. I waited until everyone was quiet, forks resting, mouths full of wine or words unsaid. There's something I need to talk to you all about, I said, my voice steady. A pause. My mother glanced up from refilling Sam's glass. Of course, honey. Everything okay? Alyssa leaned in, still smiling. Is this about dating? Did someone finally make you cancel your Friday plant watering routine? The table chuckled softly. I set the folder on the table. The silence that followed was different. Heavy. Intentional. This is a police report, I said. I filed it 3 days ago. My father straightened, his brow furrowed. Police? What's happened? I looked directly at Alyssa. It's about identity theft. Fraud. The purchase of a home using my name, a mortgage I didn't authorize, documents I didn't sign. Her smile flickered, then vanished. Naomi, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the house on Highland Avenue, I said, my gaze unwavering. The one you're living in. My mother let out a quiet, confused gasp. But that's their new place, isn't it? I nodded. It is. And according to the paperwork, it also happens to be mine. The mortgage, the credit lines, the debt, it's all under my name. Alyssa let out a sharp, brittle laugh. That's ridiculous. Why would I? How would I even do that? Forgery. False income claims. Using an email address 1 character off from mine. Submitting everything from your old condo's IP address. Need more? I opened the folder and slid the documents forward, fanned out for all to see. Gavin stood up fast, knocking his chair slightly. We don't have to do this here. My father's voice cut through the tension, low and utterly unfamiliar. Sit down, Gavin. Alyssa's face had gone utterly pale. She glanced at the papers, but didn't touch them. It was supposed to be temporary, she said, finally, her voice thin. You stole my identity. You weren't using it, she snapped, suddenly enraged. You live in a shoebox. You make less than half what you deserve. We just needed time. Once Gavin's practice bounced back, don't. I cut her off, my voice ice cold. Don't you dare try to turn this into some twisted rescue mission. You lied. You built a life out of mine. Gavin exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. I told you it would come back on us. You went along with it, I said, looking at him directly. I didn't sign the papers, but you knew. You used the cards. You paid for a Mercedes with stolen credit. My mom stood, trembling. Alyssa, tell me this isn't true. Alyssa looked at her like a child caught in a lie too big to deny. We were drowning, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. You all expected so much from me. The house, the image, the lifestyle. We couldn't keep up. My dad stood too, his face
grim.
So, you buried your sister to stay above water. Tears were now streaming down Alyssa's face, her mascara smearing slightly. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought we'd fix it before anyone found out. You were planning to file bankruptcy in my name, I said quietly, the weight of that truth settling heavily in the silence. You were never going to fix anything. The room fell silent again, a suffocating quiet. Finally, my father spoke, his voice firm, resolute. Get out, both of you. Dad. Alyssa started, but he just shook his head.
No, he said.
We'll deal with the fallout, but you won't do it under this roof. Alyssa opened her mouth to say something else, then stopped. Gavin took her arm, and they left without another word. My mother sank back into her chair, her face in her hands. I don't know who she is anymore, she whispered. I didn't answer. Because neither did I. The fallout came fast, and it was louder than I ever expected. By Monday morning, the local news had picked up the story. Prominent realtor and financial advisor under investigation for identity theft. The article didn't name me, but the address was listed, and anyone who'd ever sat at our dinner table could connect the dots. Texts poured in. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years messaged. Is it true? A former coworker from my first job commented on a post with just a single, impactful damn. I turned off all my notifications and left my phone in a drawer. My parents, on the other hand, didn't retreat so easily. Mom called that Wednesday, her voice thin with exhaustion. Your dad won't even go to his golf group, she said. He says he can't face them. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, my voice carefully even. She's still your sister, Naomi. I stayed quiet. She made a mistake, a terrible one. But there must be a way to handle this, quietly. There it was. The word they all kept dancing around. Quietly. It wasn't the first time I'd been asked to be quiet for the sake of peace. Growing up, when Alyssa threw tantrums or bent the truth, I was always told to take the high road. And I did. Again and again. Until that road turned into a cliff. She didn't make a mistake, Mom, I said firmly. She made a series of deliberate decisions. She had every chance to stop. My mother sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. She could go to prison. I know. And the kids. My heart flinched. Harper and Reed, 5 and 7. Bright, funny, innocent. They didn't ask for any of this. Think about them, she said softly. Do you want them to grow up visiting their mother through glass? It was the first time I truly wavered. I didn't want revenge. I wanted restoration. Of my credit. My name. My life. But was justice truly worth the collateral damage? I didn't have an answer until my friend Stephanie showed up unannounced at my door with 2 iced coffees and a look in her eye that said she wasn't buying my silence. They're trying to guilt you, she said, without preamble. Don't let them. They're scared. And the kids, I murmured. I get it. But let me ask you something. She leaned forward, her gaze intense. If this had been a stranger who did this to you, would you even hesitate? No, I answered immediately. So, why does biology give her a discount? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I already knew the answer. That weekend, the district attorney's office called. They were moving forward with formal charges. They asked if I wanted to provide a statement before the hearing. I told them yes. That night, I reopened the drawer and looked at my phone again. One unread message from my mom. You have every right to be angry, but please don't let this ruin all of us. I typed and deleted 5 replies before finally sending just one sentence. She did that, not me. 9 months after my name was used to build someone else's dream, I signed a mortgage document. My name, my choice, my terms. No forged income, no ghost email addresses, no lies. Just me, a pen, and a truth I had earned the hard way. The irony pressed in from all sides. My sister had hijacked my identity to buy a life she couldn't afford. And now, I was doing the very thing she claimed I wasn't aiming high enough to achieve. I'd bought a modest 2-bedroom in Bloomington. The backyard was patchy, the appliances outdated, and the mailbox was dented. But it was mine, paid for with real money, real credit, and a hard-earned peace. Alyssa and Gavin both pleaded guilty. 18 months in federal prison for her, 12 for him. Their social media perfect life collapsed under the weight of court records and relentless press coverage. I didn't attend the sentencing. I had no interest in watching the aftermath. I was too busy rebuilding what they tried to dismantle. When I moved in, Stephanie brought champagne and a welcome mat that read, "Not today, identity thieves." My parents came separately. My mother brought lasagna in a baking dish I recognized from childhood. My father handed me a fern in a clay pot and said, "I didn't say it before, but you were right to do what you did." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A few weeks later, I received a letter addressed in pink marker, sealed with a unicorn sticker. It was from Harper. "Dear Aunt Naomi, I know Mommy did something really bad. I still love her, but I love you too. I drew a flower for your new house because Mommy says you grow good plants. Can I come visit one day?" I stared at that note for a long time. The betrayal had nearly broken me, but this wasn't a story about ruin. It was a story about planting new roots. I may never truly forgive my sister, but I don't need to live in that shadow anymore. This house, flawed as it is mine. It was built on truth, not theft. On boundaries, not guilt. And for the first time in a very long time, I feel safe inside my own name. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what was undeniably right? Or maybe you've been through something similar. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think.